Welcome to Red, White, and Blue. From the right, I'm Gary Polland.
And from the left, I'm David Jones.
Tonight we welcome Mayor Annise Parker of Houston. And Mayor Parker, you don't have a distinction. You have more appearances on the show than anybody else except David and I. So congratulations.
I must really be a glutton for punishment.
And when So last week, as the show airs, we talked with 3 city council members, and they said that we have some serious budget problems in the city of Houston. I'm not sure that they know exactly what you're going to do to pull off the types of controls that are necessary to balance this year, and certainly next year is even more challenging. What do you have to say to them?
There are a lot of things going on, and for I'm sorry I didn't see the show. I would be shocked to see 3 sitting council members not knowing what's going on. We start every council meeting these days with a presentation by a city department talking about the budget-cutting measures that they have done in that department. But we have the immediate short-term measures we're doing to plug the current budget gap, which, frankly, got bigger after the anti-red light camera vote. We have things that we're doing to reform the way we do business down at City Hall. There's a whole range of efficiency consolidations and changes in policy that are in progress. And then we have some big long-term, long-standing financial issues, such as our pension underfunding, that are just going to take time to work through. So I'm operating on all 3 of those fronts, and I'm regularly reporting to council about that.
Well, I don't mean to be misleading about them being that confused, but one of them
David was confused.
One of them brought projections that talked about the 2012 budget being sort of like maybe $117 million in the hole.
Yes.
And one of the remedies for that was a 5-cent increase in the property tax rate. And that was proposed.
Who brought that?
It was part of.
I am not proposing any increases in property taxes.
Not this year, but maybe next.
I did not propose an increase in the property taxes for this last year. I'm not proposing an increase in the property tax this year. I'm not saying that our budgetary situation's not painful. We are down 500 employees since I took office a year ago, but I haven't had to go in and lay off large groups of people. What we've been doing is we've been looking at each department. Can we operate this department for less? Is there a service that we don't need to perform? Can we consolidate for efficiencies? And so we've been doing it step by step, strategically, and starting off with a budget gap of actually a couple of $100 million in terms of where the initial projections were, and gradually coming down. Today, between now and June, I have to find $8 million in a $1.8 billion budget. I'm not worried about that. I can do it. Then we start the new fiscal year, and there are another set of challenges, and I would say $100 to $120 million gap. One of the big drivers of that is health costs, and another big driver of that is pension costs, and the third big driver of that, no duh, we're a service organization, is a salary for our active employees. As we speak, we are in meet and confer with the police union. We just opened meet and confer with the fire union, and before I get to that budget, I have salary negotiations with the civilian employees, and I'm starting all those negotiations with, we don't have any money, there aren't going to be any pay raises. Let's talk about how we get there.
I guess
so I'm working on it. Is
it fair to say, though, that nobody ever wants to go through tighter economic times, but everyone does from time to time, and this is enabling you in your administration to go through and look at the city and scrub the budget and find areas of inefficiency, find areas where there's waste, and cleaning it up. When the money's flush, nobody ever seems to care about that. So that's being done. And so when the economy does recover and revenue to the city is restored, the city should be in a lot better shape.
It will be in better shape. We'll be able to run leaner and meaner. Now, it depends on how long we take to where the economy picks up again, because while I think voters in general make the right choices, they often can have conflicting opinions about things. They want more and more services, but they don't want to pay for them. And the hard part is where you decide to start lopping off those services that a lot of people like, but is it the best use of our city tax dollars to perform? And
do you see the rosy scenario that Gary is painting for
no, I
our
absolutely
future?
believe that.
Because nobody says we're going to be back to pre-recession employment numbers until 2015.
I agree. But we were the last into the recession. We're going to be, I think, the first out of the recession. We are going to be better positioned as a city because of the pain we're going through now and the cutbacks that we're undergoing. It's just as long as we don't, the economy doesn't take a significant turn for the worse, and as long as the state doesn't send stuff rolling at us.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the state. And
Parks and libraries and the health department, those are the three areas that are going to be most affected by what happens at the state level. I mean, they've already announced they're slashing parks funding and library funding. They've taken away millions of dollars for dealing with the homeless. Well, the homeless aren't going to go away. So that just means that it's not exactly an unfunded mandate. It's simply that the problem's still here, and we have to figure out other ways to deal with it.
And speaking of that, you talked about David was, I guess, seeking a property tax increase because there's no tax that David doesn't want to raise. That's kind of his history. Mayor, you've properly rejected that. But looking at the revenue model for the city as we go forward, is this a model that's still viable, or does it a model need tinkering?
When you say a revenue model, see, I'm not exactly sure what I mean.
All right, well, here's what you've got. You got property taxes.
Tax people in Bel Air is what he's thinking.
No.
About half of what we spend is property taxes, 25% on top of that, sales tax, 10% franchise fees, and then there's everything else.
Okay, well, let's talk about, like, for example, sales tax. One of the things I heard when I was in Austin yesterday talking to people was, you know, we have a sales tax and we don't want to raise taxes, but boy, there's sure a lot of exemptions and safe harbors for the sales tax that aren't there. Primarily, number one being the internet. That the internet is, and of course they said, well, originally it was to create this, boost it, but it's boosted. So, you know, I said, well, is that something you ought to look at? I was told they're going to look at that. That's one of the loopholes they said they might start closing.
To look at that. It's not something I can do at the local level, but
you'd benefit.
You'd benefit, absolutely, and we should consider it at the state level.
One of the analysts that the Chronicle seems to enjoy putting in the newspaper is Bill King, who says that not too long from now, your pension contributions will eat up half of the property taxes that you bring in unless something is done. Is Mr. King on the right track in his analysis of not only where we're headed, but how we got there, which was in 2000 when some people were not paying attention, according to
this problem didn't happen overnight, and it's not going to go away overnight. He's on the right track, although he seems to feel that if we only had the political will at the City of Houston, we could take care of the issue. I have the ability to negotiate with my police pension. I have 3 unions for actives, and I have 3 pensions. It's 6 separate negotiations. I can negotiate with the police retirees and the civilian retirees. I cannot negotiate with the fire retirees. It's all handled in Austin. So right off the bat, you have one segment. And right now I'm paying 29% of payroll. 29 cents of every dollar I have going into the fire department goes to the retirees. That's unsustainable. But I can't do anything about that. I can't say that. The previous administration, Bill White sat down with the municipal retirees and the police retirees and negotiated changes. They work longer, they receive a lesser benefit, they put more of their money in to the retirement system. If we have the tools to do it, we're quite prepared to sit down and negotiate our way out of this, but I want all of my pensions at the table making those negotiations.
One of the solutions that other entities around the country, big business, other states, other municipalities have looked at is going from the defined benefit plan to a defined contribution plan. Is that something that is even doable for the city going forward, with this, even starting with new employees, when you start hiring new employees?
Already in our police pension, for example, new police officers coming in have a very different benefit than current police officers. It's absolutely something that can be done. You can ratchet down a defined benefit pension to where it is affordable and more closely resembles a defined contribution pension. So rather than getting into which one is better, the private sector is now used to, we say defined contribution. It just means we set a fixed amount available to cover pensions, and whatever you earn as an individual, that's what you get out at the end. But in the private sector, you're more commonly called a 401k.
Right.
Something that's now people are comfortable with. I think public pensions are going to move in that direction, but we are so far away from being able to push that it's not a productive conversation. I want the ability to sit across from a negotiating table and hammer out what is affordable to the citizens of Houston today, not these transformative changes that might or might not happen in the future.
Were you at the U.S. Conference of Mayors?
Long answer. I'm sorry.
Were you
Getting down the weeds on that.
I think that there was a conference of mayors recently that went to Washington, spoke with the president. Were you a part of that?
I was.
What's the broader picture that the mayors across the country are, how are they informing the president about the problems facing the cities, especially here in Texas, where we've got a war against urban Texas going on in state government?
Cities are the economic engines for America. That's where the job creation is, the manufacturing takes place, the work of building America takes place, and many of us who are mayors have felt that the current administration doesn't really understand cities and the needs of cities, and we've been raising that issue. I think President Obama, after this last election, has refocused his attention in a lot of different areas. We, at the same time, cities are service organizations, and the vast majority of our expenses have to do with our personnel. When I talked about the cost drivers for next year's budget, what did I mention? I mentioned salaries, I mentioned pensions, and I mentioned health benefits. As mayors, this whole Obamacare debate and all of that, we are large employers, and we just want to bring our health care costs into line. And we want our federal representatives to come to the table and work it out.
So you're just a check writing facility then? Is that's what the city of Houston is? You just take care of 20,000 people and their pensions?
If you want your trash picked up, David, you just keep going in that direction. Okay.
I wanted to ask you about a couple of things. First, state mandates that we in Texas we're supposed to be having now this year conservative government. Conservatives are controlling everything. A lot of my friends. Is there hope that the city of Houston can get out from under state mandates, which require the city to spend money but don't send the money along to help to pay for it?
All of the big cities across Texas are focused on unfunded mandates. We worry about them from the federal government. We worry about them from the state. We're so early in the legislative session, and it's so chaotic up there right now. If the highest priority with the looming budget problem they have is to do a voter ID bill or a sonogram bill, I'm worried about our ability to navigate as a state through these budget problems. I'm not going to try to anticipate what kind of trouble they can do up there, but we are worried about it.
Two of your council members who were here were absolutely silent on whether or not it's an obligation of city leadership to go to Austin and say that losing 10,000 state jobs, 100,000 teachers, 60,000 kids having financial aid reduced, and $2 billion cuts to CHIP and Medicaid is the wrong thing to do. They were silent. They were Republicans, by the way. What is your view about whether or not it's your obligation to say no to the Perry Dewhurst budget priorities?
My job is to try to protect the city of Houston. I have a limited legislative agenda having to do with actually getting to meet and confer with my fire pension and a few other things, and to try to fend off unfunded mandates and to express if there are cuts that directly impact the city of Houston. I may have a personal opinion about a whole range of things that they do in Austin, but no, it is my obligation is to protect the city.
who will have sicker kids and dumber kids as a result of the budget? And
Well, that's your comment,
is that it?
David. That's
I
what
mean,
you think.
we can't do anything about that?
I have clear policy differences with the current leadership in the state of Texas, and I, in fact, have been I don't know whether amused and a combination of amused and exasperated to see the governor talk about Houston as a sanctuary city, and the election's over. I have the same policy here in the city of Houston that the Texas Department of Public Safety has in terms of dealing with illegal immigrants. There's a lot of rhetoric that gets thrown around, David. My job is to focus on protecting the interests of the city.
You were able, your administration in the city and the supporters were able to pass Prop 1, which was a drainage and infrastructure fee set aside. That was bitterly fought. But once it's into...
Not an overwhelming mandate, but it did pass.
Well, it did pass in a strong Republican year, which I think...
A very anti-government year.
In an anti-government year. So as this rolls out, what is this going to have in terms of meaning for the city, let's say in 2 or 3 years when it's fully operational?
I am so glad that you said in 2 or 3 years when it's fully operational. We actually have to implement it now by charter in July of this year, but you're not going to see the impact of it for several years. And it's going to be frustrating to me that I'll have the pain, but I won't really be in office long enough to see the gain. But it has the ability to transform the physical space of the city, to truly be able to put the money necessary into drainage, keeping water out of people's homes and businesses, and to upgrade our streets all across the city of Houston. I was at a business meeting recently, and someone said, well, what are you as the city going to do to help business people in the city of Houston thrive? And the answer is, we provide the platform on which you operate. You have to have good streets. We have to be able to navigate those streets in a 2-inch rainstorm. We provide the basic infrastructure. The water and the sewer system has to work. The city has to be clean. And then it's the private sector's job to make money on that platform that we provide.
But they can't make us safe. And I remember a
Safety
news
is
account
another
saying
big
that we were in the top 10 of cities with 500,000 in population in terms
Wrong,
of dangerousness.
Don't believe everything you see in the media. You should know that.
I don't know about FBI statistics. I've never heard anyone challenge them too well. I mean, maybe you can, but I think we're a dangerous city. You don't?
Every big city has public safety challenges. Anytime you have large numbers of people in a relatively small space, you've got a certain number of them that are criminals. We are also, unfortunately, close to a really brutally unsafe situation along the border, just across the border with Mexico and filtering into the interior of Mexico. We have been largely insulated from that in the past, but we know that we're a major hub for human trafficking into the United States.
Gun trafficking as well.
Well, guns and money going south, and drugs and human beings coming north. So there are public safety issues, but we are actually a relatively safe city as well. Our crime rate continues to drop, and you're seeing an era of closer and closer coordination and cooperation among all the law enforcement entities in this area.
I guess
there used to be a lot more turf warfare, and I think you're seeing we're communicating, we're coordinating activities better.
Your predecessor was a member of an organization called Mayors Against Illegal Guns.
I am not.
And that is Mr. Bloomberg's organization. 550 mayors are in it. Isn't that a solution, is to regulate, enforce the law even? And why not join it?
I absolutely believe in enforcing the law. I also believe that we have the right within certain parameters to carry and own weapons in this country. There are things that I agree with Mayor Bloomberg on. In fact, the most recent discussion after the Gabby Giffords shooting is whether citizens should be able to have high-capacity magazines or for their semi-automatic weapons. I'm a gun owner. I see no reason for anybody to have the ability to have those high-capacity magazines, which are developed for the military. So I could agree with Mayor Bloomberg on that. But do I want someone to take guns out of people's hands who own them and use them safely and are permitted and licensed appropriately? No.
Oh, well, David, you lost that one.
Sounds like the mayor puts me on the slippery slope.
Yes. Okay. Very good. I want to move on to talk about something we talk about. Well, two things. I want to talk about you're about a little over a year in office.
Yes.
Okay. So reflections. Was it as good as you thought it would be, or were there some disappointments, or were there any big surprises?
Well, what's your favorite TV program, Gary? Why don't you
That
answer
would
me?
probably be Red,
What's
White, and
the
Blue
TV?
when she's our guest.
What's the TV? I'm out all the time. I still love my job. It is a great job. It is a lot what I expected it to be. The fact that I have no anonymity any longer when I leave the house here in the city of Houston is problematic. It makes me much more conscious of making sure that that how I'm dressed and what my hair looks like before I walk out my front door. I've always getting used to having security, and all the big city mayors do is something that's taken some time to adjust to. There were surprises. The president deciding that he was going to kill jobs at NASA very early on in my administration. I ended up spending a lot of time going back and forth to Washington, working with the congressional delegation. The BP Horizon explosion and spill, again, direct impact on Houston, a lot more interactions with Washington, fighting the drilling moratorium, and Continental United merger, waking up one day and reading that our hometown airline was going to be headquartered in Chicago.
Maybe you can get them back, actually, because they raised corporate income taxes in Illinois. Maybe you can talk them into coming to Houston.
The headquarters is gone. They cut that deal before it ever hit the paper, but we are going to gain jobs in Houston from the merger. It costs something on the order of $20,000 a year less to have an employee in the Houston area in Texas than it does in Chicago.
So there does seem to be a war going on against the city of Houston. I mean, in many ways,
war.
NASA,
no, these are the kind of things that impact any city. Now, do I have a little chip on my shoulder about NASA? Yes, because we have a significant portion of NASA here, but the Space Coast in Florida does as well, and it seemed as if all of the retraining money, job retention money was going to Florida just before the election, and not much coming to Houston. And so we've been in there throwing some elbows.
What about the ethics ordinance, Mayor, that recently passed? And I understand that council members can still take all kind of long plane rides to foreign capitals, and nobody has to report that. Is it a strong ordinance or a weak one?
David, not true. It's all reportable. It's not that we banned it. The state law already says that you have to report that. What we've done is inject more openness into the process because there's more things you have to disclose. And we've made it easier for people to track what we do. We weren't interested in going beyond state law and prohibiting things, but if you violate our ordinance, we now have the ability to prosecute at the local level.
Class Z fines, right? Well,
it's about having the voters giving the voters a window into what we do, and then it's up to the voters to decide whether these are problems or actions that they think are inappropriate.
Now, speaking of voters, in November we have another city election. We're going to add a couple of council districts. We have a mayor's race and a controller's race. So you don't have to declare you're running for re-election on the show today, but of course, rumor is you will.
I'm going to run for re-election. Okay. That is not a secret.
Okay. Go, David. So it's not a scoop.
I assume that the city controller will run for re-election as well, and he's doing an excellent job.
Do you anticipate any serious opposition?
There's no such thing as an unopposed mayoral race in Houston, so I'm going to have some people running against me, but I fully expect to be the mayor next year.
It's not going to be Ann Clutterbuck who said on the show that she's not interested. I mean,
I don't speculate who wants to run against me or not. I will campaign full out. I have a nice war chest. I will launch my campaign sometime February or March, the formal part of the campaign, and I tend to be very aggressive about it.
And you're not worried about Gary's friend Paul Betancourt, I take it? That's an easy answer. Wait a minute.
I think she thinks if he wants to run, he should run, right, Mayor?
It is a free country, and anyone can run. The distinction I try to make is I'm not saying people should run or not run. I'm well positioned for re-election. I am going to run a full campaign, and I'm going to focus on taking care of business at the city. The best politics is good policy.
I think you convinced us, Mayor.
I'm between the budget, redistricting, and Rebuild Houston, which is the drainage fee. You see what I'm going to be doing for the next 5 months.
Thanks
and
for being
that'll
with
be
us. Come back
everything.
again soon.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
We invite you to visit our home online at HoustonPBS.org. Click on the local program bar, red, white, and blue. Read about the guests, watch the shows, follow-up discussion. Until next time, get informed and get active.